Welcome to the Biohacking Standards, your one-stop podcast where we talk about spirituality, health, and wellness, and all things new. Stick around as we delve deep into innovations to support a better you.
What if we've gotten biohacking backwards? Think about it. We spend billions of dollars chasing better sleep, better hormones, better mitochondria, better nutrition, better recovery. We optimize our blood work. We track our HRV. We measure glucose down to the minute. We buy every gadget imaginable. But here's the question. What if none of that matters as much as we think if the person using all those tools is still living in constant fear, resentment, anxiety, ego, or disconnection? Maybe the first thing we're supposed to optimize isn't biology. Maybe it's consciousness. Maybe spirituality isn't separate from biohacking. Maybe it's the operating system underneath it. Today's guest has spent decades asking what makes humans perform at the highest level, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. Dave Asprey created the biohacking industry by challenging conventional thinking about longevity, cognition, and human potential. But today's conversation goes somewhere even deeper. We're going to explore whether true biohacking begins long before supplements, fasting, cold plunges, or wearable technology. It begins with your relationship to purpose, to gratitude, to forgiveness, to meaning, to the stories you tell yourself, to the energy you bring into every decision you make. Because if your inner world is chaotic, can you really optimize your external biology? Maybe that's why some of the highest performing people in the world eventually discover that success without inner alignment doesn't feel like success at all. This isn't a conversation about religion. It's a conversation about becoming fully human. Because maybe the greatest upgrade isn't living longer. Maybe it's learning how to live better. So let's explore the idea that spirituality isn't the opposite of biohacking. It may be the foundation that makes every other optimization actually work. Let's welcome Dave Asprey to the show. Imagine if you could go back to the early days of companies like Apple, Tesla, or SpaceX, not because of the products they were selling at the time, but because you believed in the future they were trying to build. That's what Igniton is all about. Yes, today we create premium wellness products designed to support cognition, longevity, and restorative sleep and skin. And they're all backed by carefully selected ingredients and supported by clinical research. But for us, they're only the beginning. At Igniton, we believe the future of human wellness will be shaped not only by chemistry, but by a deeper understanding of how living systems organize, communicate, and maintain coherence. We're investing in the science, the research, and the technologies that could one day expand how we think about recovery, performance, and healthy aging. Every bottle we ship today helps fund that journey. When you choose Igni Cognition, Igni Longevity, Igni REM Sleep, or Igni Peptide Eye Serum, you're not simply buying a supplement. You're joining a community that believes the next great frontier in wellness is still waiting to be discovered. Some companies sell products, others build the future. We intend to do both. Learn more about Igniton's mission, explore the science, and become part of the Igniton community at igniton.com by using code ASHLEY to save 15% on your first purchase. That's igniton.com and code ASHLEY for 15% off without a subscription. Igniton is building the future of quantum wellness. Igniton, born from light, backed by science. Dave Asprey, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. It's great to see you again.
I am happy to see you too. It's been a long time.
At least, not even 24 hours, like 22 hours, something like that?
Yeah, you were in my studio to be on my show, so this is funny.
It is funny how things work out that way. Well, thank you for joining. I'm excited to talk to you, and this is not going to be one of those other, tell us about biohacking episodes. I want to get into some more deeper conversations around the spirituality dimension, if that's cool with you. But before we get into that, I wonder, you're the father of biohacking, 2 decades of work, clearly, defining a movement has been a big deal and been highly successful at that. But I wonder, where have your views changed if you look back on your own definition of biohacking?
Well, biohacking is something that I came up with as a concept while I was walking around the holiest mountain in the world in remote Western Tibet. And I was thinking to myself, I've run a longevity nonprofit group. I've learned for a long time from people 3 and 4 times, maybe almost 4, 3 times my age. And so I've got longevity. I was a gym bro. It didn't really work that well, but I've got that. And I've started doing neurofeedback, and like there's nowhere for us to meet and talk. So I spent 6 weeks going, what do I call this so that I can make longevity cool so that I would have paid attention when I was 20 years old. And that was part of it. And the other part was I wanted a place, like a community. I could feel the need for a community. And then I wanted neuroscientists and Navy SEALs and gym bros who were the best at testosterone for years and the longevity, we'll call them nerds, to all sit down and say, we're all doing the same thing. And that includes breathwork. That includes the yoga teachers and all the stuff where we're blending the ancient knowledge with the modern knowledge, and we're using science and data to validate which of the ancient practices you would want to use for what person when, and which new things we could invent by mixing and matching all of that. And so I would say what's changed is, well, I used to say biohacking is the art and science of changing the environment around you and inside of you so you have full control of your biology. And I said it that way because control over your body is something that everyone seeks at every age. Like, God, like, why am I feeling anxious right now? Like, why won't it do what I want? Why does it look the wrong way? Why do I have brain fog? Right. And I've kind of evolved it to say to control of your state, because I knew when I said the first thing, if you make your body feel good, your state will change. But I feel like we're at a stage in society where you can say, I want to change my state. Like, I would actually like to be more focused. I would like to be happier, regardless of if I have a few extra pounds on my butt or whatever. So the coupling of your state that includes your energetic state and your biology state it's the ultimate goal for everybody.
Yeah, that kind of leads me right down to the path I wanted it to. So good deal, even though we didn't rehearse that. The premise of this show is that it's called the biohacking standards, and I'm really trying to do something different. The major audience is Gaia. They own Igniton, which is the sponsor of this show, and
Oh yeah.
the biohacking standards, really the premise is that spirituality is the foundation of biohacking. You got to have your spirit in order before you start to deal with your body or your material world, so to speak, right? I wonder, as you've gotten older and through this journey, has your spiritual life become more important?
Well, before I was 30, I would have said that anyone who had a spiritual life was probably a dumbass and should do some science.
Yeah.
That's because I come from a family where my grandparents on my dad's side both worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory. I'm doing like nuclear engineering stuff. And when my grandfather was about to pass away, as a lifelong atheist, he leaned over to my dad and he said, son, I've been thinking about this religious thing and I'm in hospice. I know I'm about to die. And I'm really thinking about religion. And I'm more convinced than ever that it's all bullshit. He was trolling my dad about his own death, right? And I respect the hell out of him. At the same time, he woke up from a dream that told him the process for purifying plutonium we still use today for our reactors, called the Purex process. And he spent many, many hours as a scoutmaster in nature and was a master gardener and was totally connected to the natural world. So he didn't practice organized religion, but he was a spiritual guy. And in fact, you could probably say little shades of alchemy in there if you look at what he was doing in the labs. So I think there's always been a spiritual thing that I denied. But once I started doing things like my first experience ever of personal development was holotropic breathing and IFS many, many, many years ago, internal family systems, which is these are deep trauma techniques. And I thought, oh God, now there's a bunch of spiritual stuff. I got to learn all this. And that's what set me on this path. First was I tried all the science that was supposed to make me lose 100 pounds and make my brain work, and it didn't. And I was kind of angry about that. So then I said, I'm going to try all the stupid stuff, like the things that in the way I was raised, only the dumbest, most gullible people on earth would ever do. And I was kind of embarrassed to do this stuff. And I'm, a computer science guy and Silicon Valley and all that. And this stuff works. So it turns out there's a whole side of the world that your wakeful, normal state brain does not show you. And it doesn't mean it's not there. And maybe the thing that showed me that I could do this the most was that I used to have a problem with speeding when I was a young man. Or actually, it wasn't really a problem. I just thought the speed limits were too low, and they are. But
I just had a ticket my wife put on my desk this morning.
nice.
Like one of those traffic cams got me.
Couldn't they just raise the tax on gas by 2 cents and throw away the traffic cams? It seems like
Yeah,
it'd do the same
exactly.
results of tax on driving. Anyway, so when I was 16, I bought a radar detector. Nobody had them back then, this clunky thing, because I don't know, I'm a nerd. And all of a sudden, I'm like, my God, I am driving through all of these invisible fields. I cannot see them. I have no
Mhm.
sense of them. But this little device goes beep when there's something I can't see that I'm walking through, or not walking, driving through. And all of a sudden, like it just set my brain thinking, huh, I wonder what else is actually there that I can't detect. Right. And it created this kind
Yeah.
of map in my mind of, well, if there's a hidden world and then there's a visible world, well, of course, that's the basis of reality. So that got baked in since I was 16 years old. And when I started doing these advanced spiritual practice things, the idea that, oh, there might be things that I can't see unless I alter my state, it didn't seem like a big stretch. And after I had that first experience that it was possible. And some people would call that an awakening or something, but it wasn't, it wasn't like a deity spoke with me, but I had profound experiences of what some people would say are past lives or trauma resolution. I had a lot of PTSD around birth trauma that I was eventually able to resolve. And I just realized, oh, the world is simultaneously spiritual and irrational and rational, and so is my body. And eventually that led to this idea that's at the core of most of what I teach is that there's two systems inside of you. There's the logical you and there's the emotional you. And the emotional you isn't actually you. It's a separate intelligence. It runs your body while you run at least most of your mind. And the fact that its goals are different than yours creates a lot of conflict if you think that it's the same as you. Like, why won't my body do what I want it to do? It's like, well, your body doesn't have your goals. That's why. So that understanding is like, oh my God, now I'm not nuts. My body is rational if you see the world the way it does and you want what it does. How do I train the body to do what I want? That's what biohacking is. And the difference, my God, Ashley, like my brain can do things it never could do. My body's in the best shape ever. Like I am just like cut, and I don't spend almost any time on it. And it's it's hard to put words to it, but just the amount of like joy and drive and motivation and happiness. And I have 8 companies, and I built a $200 billion industry. And I literally came up with the name for biohacking on the side of Mount Kailash, and came back and a few years later started tweeting about it. And like, wow, who would have thought? But that's where it came from. So it's a combination of spiritual and physical. But I'm not. I would say I'm more open about the spiritual side. But have I changed? Not really. Not since I was after 30. I've just I've become more. Maybe I've gained some wisdom and more like just what would they say in the monasteries? Attainment. So
Mhm.
there's levels of control over yourself in altered states, and I've got a pretty good degree of attainment there without triggering spiritual ego. Just like I've learned to do things that I didn't think were possible, and um, I do those when I'm called to, and so that feels like the right mix of spiritual and rational. I would say.
So does that what you mean? I mean, there's your branding is evolving with the conference, right? The biohacking conference is now beyond biohacking. Is that part of what you're talking about with that shift in branding?
Well, even the very first infographic for biohacking, I still remember when I was introducing the world to the term. I made this like a dictionary definition with bio little apostrophe hacking, like how you would say it, like in
Yeah.
the Webster's dictionary. I wouldn't have imagined that in 2018 they actually put it in Webster's dictionary, and my name is there online, which is nuts. It's like a new word added to the language, and just thinking back to that time about about this. All right. And there's a specific angle that you're looking for here, and I don't remember what it was.
It's beyond.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there we go. So biohacking, that's the picture of the infographic downloaded so fully in my head that I'm like, what am I talking about? So in that thing, there was like a triangle. It said mind, body, and spirit. Pretty classical, personal dev, new agey
Yeah.
stuff. But then I had all the sets of practices and technologies that supported each one independently. So it's always been there in biohacking, but I started out with mind and body because that's where society was at the time. And if I added too much spiritual, then the whole movement would not have taken off the way it did. It had to have enough spiritual that spiritually aware people could like recognize it, but not enough to repel the engineers and executives and scientists who maybe didn't recognize that spirit mattered very much. Because I
Mhm.
knew if I could get them to fix their bodies and their minds, the spiritual becomes apparent to whatever degree it needs to for that. And the reason I changed the conference name to Beyond Biohacking is that some of will say the lower vibration people who joined into the field have become very like bro, like either very data driven, like I am a meat robot, I will only follow the data. Dude, you need the data, but if you ignore your spiritual side and your needs and your happiness and your intuition because you're following the data, it's not a good thing. Same thing when I worked in venture capital. Like the best VCs, they listen to their gut, their intuition. And if the data, the spreadsheet lines up, they're probably going to make money because the data and the gut line up. And if the data says yes and the gut says no, they pass.
Yeah.
And sometimes the gut says yes and the data says no, and they invest anyway. And that's when they make the most money, right? Because like no one
Yeah.
else can see it, but I know, right? So the people who only follow data in the biohacking world and kind of reject the spiritual or reduce it to less than it actually is, I think they're missing out on the magic of life. So
Mhm.
that's part of the reason. The other reason is that there's about, I don't know, a dozen or so people around the world who decided to start conferences called the Biohacking something else and copy the same font and the same color. And some of them even try to use my name like I'm speaking there because I did not trademark the name Biohacking because I wanted it to be a global movement, which it became. So I may be the leader of the biohacking movement, but I do not own the term because it's owned by all of us on purpose. So
Good
now
for you.
beyond biohacking, now you know what you're going to.
Good for
I
you.
don't
Thank you
I
for
don't like being blamed for other people's bad conferences. We'll put it that way.
yeah, I get it. It's interesting you bring up that balance between data and intuition. I was just watching the other night. I was walking through my house, and my son was watching Moneyball. With Brad Pitt. It's the baseball movie, and the scene was when he was first explaining the data and how they were going to build the Oakland A's, and all the old time scouts were sitting around, and they were like, "Oh, this guy can't play, he can't play," and they're all talking about 100% intuition. And the character in the movie is bringing forward this data perspective, and um, my son is, he's not aware of the old history of baseball and so forth. I used to be a
Right.
baseball nerd, so I really know the sport. And I was telling him, yeah, this is the way all decisions used to be made. It's just these old guys who had these gut feelings about players, and that's how they gave people their breaks. And really what's needed is a balance between the two, because that intuition is very real. It's a spiritual piece of the evaluation, but you got to have the data too. And it sounds
Um,
like that's exactly what you're saying is kind of the evolution of biohacking.
absolutely. And because this is a Gaia show, a Gaia episode, I think I can speak a little bit more on the spiritual side of things. The study of consciousness has been happening for a long time. And the way we used to do it was really straightforward. We would take 10% of the weird people, maybe 10% of the people, the weird ones, and we put them in monasteries or caves or nunneries. And we'd say, hey, pay attention to all this energetic, spiritual stuff and write down everything that you notice and read all the stuff from the last guy who did that, who's just about dead. And
Yeah.
let's just do that for a couple thousand years, and pretty soon we're going to do something. That was kind of version 1.0 of understanding consciousness using science. They're literally meditate like this, and you get this result, and you try it. And I have 13th century cave meditation recipes translated from the Sanskrit on my shelf. Like they have been working on this for a long time, or I say we
Wow.
have been, right? So that's fascinating. Oh, and the guy who translated them is the top expert in the world on hypnosis, and he's a tenured professor at Harvard and has been for 30 or 40 years. So, like, this is academics and it's science. But then we had the Enlightenment happen. So then during the Enlightenment, scientists were studying consciousness. They were studying longevity, and they were trying to understand what's going on with nature by observation and recording data. It's not that different than what the people were doing in their caves and meditating, the shamanic, the druids, all those things. So there's actually a blending of magic and science was studying consciousness and studying unseen things. And it has been ever since. And we had a bit of we'll say a break in the late 1800s, early 1900s, where for financial gain, Rockefeller and a few others sort of tilted things towards being very mechanistic. But just like in Moneyball, if you're all intuition, well, then you have to have a Merlin who's really good, but you also have 10 people who say they're Merlin and you can't tell because you're not Merlin, right? You're kind of screwed up. So there's people who think they're better than they are. And then there's people who know they're not that good, but they're just con artists. And this is endemic in every field, not just in spiritual stuff. So the solution for that is just like in Moneyball, just like those investors. Well, let's get the data, but let's not throw out intuition. And when people come to 40 Years of Zen, which is where we were recording, this has been running for more than 10 years. It was the basis of the data from there was the basis of my book, Heavily Meditated, which became the best-selling philosophy book in the country and hit a bestseller list, as a lot of mine have. And it explains what's going on with this bifurcation of consciousness as well, where part of you wants this and part of you wants that. And ultimately, what we're doing is we're teaching people how to turn off triggers, and that allows you to become more aware of the intuitive signals in the world. And intuition looks like the first thing that enters your body, not necessarily your mind, but the first sensation. And it usually comes with an image, or maybe a feeling, but is very brief and relatively quiet. And right afterwards, with almost no gap, is a much larger emotion. And then after that, and usually the emotion has been trained since birth to do the opposite, to crush the intuition.
Right.
That's because you've been triggered, you've been programmed, not by anyone nefarious, or sometimes by someone nefarious, but usually just by society. And then right after that comes a thought. So you're like, okay, intuition, meh, because oh no, a feeling happens. And then a thought says, well, it's not, oh no, I'm a very rational human being. Therefore, it's your fault, not my fault. And that's pretty much how we process reality, which has worked kind of well. There's a few billion of us floating around. Unfortunately, it creates a lot of internal suffering and it sucks. So if you could just learn to turn off a lot of the unreasonable reactivity that we all have because it keeps our bodies alive, like we're big dogs. If you can turn that down, become service dogs, you can hear the intuition, and then we uptrain the intuition, and the results are profound. Like there's a sense of calmness, a lot less wasted energy in your mind and in your body. And then you have a place of peace instead of fear. And that's where those intuitive things happen. Because I can tell you that all those people who've used intuition to discover things throughout the years and to understand themselves or reality better, they didn't do it when they were terrified. They didn't do it when they were afraid. They didn't do it when they were feeling negative things. They did it when they were connected. And what I've learned that's people don't like to hear, but hey, let's share it anyway, is that thinking is a trauma response and being empathetic is a trauma response. And you're like,
Yeah.
what? So if that made you mad either way, number one, that means that you just got triggered. And if you got triggered, that means that you were carrying a loaded gun and my finger was on the trigger. How dare you? Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go deeper on that. So if you were a little kid and something and your environment didn't feel safe. By the way, it doesn't matter if it actually was safe or not. It just matters that you felt like it wasn't safe. And when you're
The
9 months
emotion.
old, who the hell knows? Like we don't really have much reality when we're 9 months old. So at some point, the way you were raised and the environment you were in taught you that if you could just predict other people's emotions, that it's going to give you more love or more safety. Okay, there you go. You're going to be extra empathetic, and you might be a healer. You might be a therapist. You might be a whatever. A lot of people who are in the spiritual realm have that history. And then there's another type, which is if you are emotionally reactive and you feel your feelings, then you'll be wrong, and then no one's going to love you. So you have to learn how to think your way out of a problem. So if you can just think about the world around you enough, you can figure out how to be loved and be safe. So the
Mhm.
practice of the practice that works in 5 days to replace 40 years of daily practice to get the same brainwaves. That's at the core of the program here is turning off the things that trigger you so you don't feel like you have to be overly empathetic or have to overly think. So all that's left is just being. And then you can choose to think when you want to. It's useful. And you can choose to be empathetic when you want to. But no one wants to be empathetic. I mean, if you ever like walked into the DMV, you want to be empathetic in the DMV? God, no. I don't want to pick up any energy from those people who are there going, I got a job where I get to tell people what to do because it's never happened in my blah, right?
Yeah.
So uncontrolled empathy, bad. Uncontrolled thinking instead of feeling, bad. So we want to learn how to just erase those. And that's what lets intuition happen. Having more energy in the brain kind of matters. And that's why things like what you're doing with Igniton is so profound because at 40 years of Zen, we're training coherence of brainwaves. And we use different types of math in our software to create alignment between the peaks and troughs of certain states in certain parts of the brain for your type of brain. And so there's a neuroscientist, a team of neurotechnicians and facilitators, and heck, a chef to get all this stuff aligned so people can just for 5 days go deep and just do decades of combing through the muck to get it all out. But that kind of coherence is around electrical coherence, but there's also quantum coherence. And there are levels of coherence, probably magnetic coherence and other things like that. And I think what you're doing with Igniton, both with the particles in the supplements as well as in the newer tech that you're developing, it's interesting because the more coherent a system is, the more intuitive you are.
Yeah. That's spot on in terms of what we're up to. So thank you for bringing that up. I want to go a little bit further on your perspective of, you're talking about intuition. Obviously it's real. We all have it. We've all experienced it, whether or not we want to admit it or not. It's there for all of us. What type of processes or practices have you encountered that can help the audience who's maybe interested in this cultivate that intuition?
Any sort of awareness practice will help you with intuition. And for a lot of people, it's just knowing what I shared there. And by the way, that is original understanding. I did not like learn this in a book or in a monastery about where intuition lives in the order of things. Like this is something looking at 1,400 high-performing people's brains, including some well-known spiritual people, as well as my own. It's the timing of intuition and the size. It's like the briefest glimpse. And as soon as you get that, you will notice that your body immediately said, no, 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 not that. And you crush it and you push it down. And instead, anytime you find yourself saying no to an internal thing that like, then laugh at your body, that's your ego, and then go back and do the original thing. And you will find there's incredible wisdom there and you throw it away every day because your system was trained to throw it away automatically since the beginning of time. And studies have shown that people who have a meditation practice are more aware of themselves and the world around you. An example, there's a study where they have meditators and non-meditators sitting in a room, and then they have the lights blink for the very briefest period of time. And the meditators, they say, what happened? They say, well, lights were on. There was a brief period they were off and they came back on. And the non-meditators, nothing happened. Right?
Yeah.
So that's just an example. So you cultivate an awareness practice. And in Heavily Meditated, the book that I just wrote, and I'm not trying to get you guys to buy this. I don't know, New York Times bestselling author. It doesn't change my life in the very slightest if you get the book, but it's meant to change yours. And for for that, there's a bunch of different old and new ways to get into these altered states that let you reprogram yourself more effectively. And breath work can work. There are certain psychedelic practices that can work, but they do have some risk with them that is worth talking about, some more than others, and some I'm very concerned about. The darkness exposure is an interesting one, and one that doesn't get nearly as much attention as it deserves, is that 20% of people report meeting God during orgasm at least once in their life. But they
Wow.
feel kind of silly telling their partner. So you might have seen your partner laying there doing what they always do, flopping around, and they're having a profound transformative spiritual experience. Right. So we don't talk about that because that's not dining room conversation, um, at least not the way I grew up. And so, maybe in Austin sometimes. So I appreciate that there's a collection of mostly women and a few men who are openly talking about this as a spiritual practice, not as something risque, because I think that's underrepresented. What two people together, even just doing a shared breathwork exercise, two people who are partnered. I think that is one of the ways to do this, because we can create safety for each other in a situation like that, and ultimately, safety is what allows intuition to emerge.
So what's going on? I mean, you're not a medical doctor, you're not a physicist. I understand that, but you're at the forefront of. You have access to a lot of different people and knowledge that most of us don't. What's happening physiologically uh, with breath work or meditation or plant medicines or orgasm? What's changing inside of us that's allowing that spiritual
Sure.
connection to happen during that?
Well, I am a scientist, and I write science books, and I am a computer scientist, which means and also I was a computer hacker, which means I can talk about this from a systems biology perspective in a way that is really beneficial. And actually, a lot of medical professionals use this as well now. So I'm very comfortable answering it. Most of these meditation techniques and breathwork and psychedelics are disrupting something called the default mode network in the brain. And the DMN, which is short for that, this is uh, essentially the home of the ego. And yes, if you're a neuroscientist, I know I'm oversimplifying because this is a podcast. So uh, when you when you lower activity in the default mode network, the sense of self dissolves, and you realize that there's oneness with the universe and with those things around you. So when you have those transformative experiences, it can happen from possibly hypoxia and some other signaling during breath work, or it can happen because a pharmaceutical is turning these things off, or it can happen because you got a big DMT surge from that tantric 2 hour session you just had. It doesn't really matter. Like, find the path that works for you, or maybe you fasted for 2 days in darkness in a cave, and boom. But something really big happens. The thing to remember is that any state you've ever experienced is stored. Not the memory necessarily, but the feeling in the body. That means that if you can bring up the feeling in the body, the memory associated with that state will come back. So if you can recall the way your body felt during your most intuitive or your most transformational or your most connected or your most divine experience in your life, and then you think, what did your stomach feel like? How was your heart? The hairs on the back of your neck? And were your fingers tingling? Was it hot? Was it cold? What did your tongue do? Were you clenching your jaw? Like every little sensation. And you just replay those, not think about them, but actually cause those sensations in your body to the best of your ability. The full felt experience will emerge. So that means you can replay divine connection if you've ever experienced it. And it's one of the things that works best when people are here in the neurofeedback pods at 40 Years of Zen, because we're telling them, well, why don't you find that one time you're really reactive? How did that feel? They're like, "Blah," and you play it back and then say, great. We'll teach you how to make the state that erases that, is how to remove the notification so you won't always get triggered by that thing. And it's the ability to replay both a negative or positive state. Once you learn the right state, that's what a lot of this loving kindness and forgiveness meditation, it's really just to teach you the state of forgiveness. Like, well, how about
Yeah.
we do red, green, hot or colder for the state of anytime, 1,000 times a second, anytime you're closer to the state of true embodied forgiveness, will give you a nice sound. And anytime you go in the wrong direction, the sound gets quieter. So pretty soon it's like you had a guide taking you up the mountain instead of saying, well, just walk in that direction and don't fall off a cliff. You'll get there eventually. That's regular meditation. I just didn't have 40 years to screw around because I was too pissed off.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. As you're doing all of this, right? One of the big things that and I've got the bag tag on my bag now. It says beyond live to 180 or something like that, right? So living to the age of 180. Um, what's the point of doing that if we don't deepen our consciousness and our experience and awareness here on this planet?
Well, can I be honest with you?
Please.
When I wrote Superhuman, which is my big book on longevity, if I'd have said hundreds of years, no one would have believed it. So I chose 180 because it's 50% better than our current best. I think I was being very
Hmm.
conservative, because the person who's 120 years old today, let's see, in 1926, the Great Depression was about to happen. World War I had just been fought on biplanes. We didn't have antibiotics. We couldn't spell DNA because we didn't know about it. We didn't like.
Hmm.
Would you send a telegram? I think if you wanted to guess it,
Yeah,
like,
probably.
right? So we have so much incredible ability to change our environment around us and to understand what's going on inside. PubMed, the sum of research, only half of which was paid for by Big Pharma and is probably lies, and the internet, and just the ability to have this conversation with video. Do you know what a miracle that is? I helped to build some of the tech that makes this sort of stuff happen. And this is amazing. So, with all that, can we just do 50% better than our current best?
Hmm.
Am I really being aggressive? No, you're looking backwards if you think that's an aggressive number. I'm looking at the rate of change for the last 30 years because I'm a Silicon Valley guy and that's how we think. And I can see where we're going. It's exponential. In fact, it's a little bit beyond exponential right now. And I'm really excited by it. And there are two asterisks to living to 180. One is that we don't, that like a comet doesn't hit the planet. That has happened.
Yeah.
And the other one is that some stupid or evil human somewhere doesn't, turn on robotic dogs that kill everyone. And I'm sure that there's someone thinking about that right now. And to you, I would just like to, say things that aren't very spiritual, so I won't. But and so, like, let's not.
Forgiveness,
Yeah.
Dave.
We'll just say, let's not destroy ourselves.
Yeah.
And if we do, that means we deserved it. Well, maybe we'll get the lesson next time around. But yeah, that's why. And the point of living to 180, or more accurately, wouldn't dying at a time and by a method of your choosing be the best? I learned meditation from many, many different lineages and paths, but one of the places where I learned was at Kopan Monastery in Kathmandu. And there they have this big stupa. And a stupa is a giant kind of domed building with a little nipple on top. And you go there and you walk around in a circle around it to gain attainment. And it has the relics from their master. And the relics are, they burn a body at the highest possible temperature for a few days. And the parts that just won't burn no matter what, like a piece of his jawbone, things that should have burned but didn't, they keep those. And then they're allegedly, I don't know, I haven't seen it happen there. They say they keep like making little pearls. And so we keep those in the sacred part of the center, and there's energetics there. Okay. I have no idea if this is real. I am not from that lineage, but I'm here to learn. So I learned I learned a lot at that monastery about meditation and about things that you totally wouldn't believe are real. And at this monastery, what they told me was, well, our master called everyone and said, I'm planning to leave next week. I'll be going. So all of his friends and students came, and said their goodbyes, and then he sat there. And then in a meditative pose, he just walked out of his body. Like, oh, I guess he's dead, right? I'd rather go that way. Or hell, I've never tried wingsuit flying. That seems like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm going to go, I'd rather go trying wingsuit flying for the first time versus dying in a hospital of a disease I could have prevented if I was a better biohacker. So
Yeah.
The point of living to 180, it's an arbitrary number, but how about live as long as you have a reason for living? And why don't you have a really good community? And what if we had people who had the wisdom of years and the energy of youth? Like, maybe we could make the world a better place and we'd stop letting short-sighted, stupid thinking dominate. Because you could say, you know what? The last 3 times the government said it was doing something for my safety, they were lying bastards. And since I lived all 3 of those, even though you're only 22, can I just tell you, because we hang out and because you trust me, that that's a bunch of bullshit, and we could establish trust between the village elders and our young adults coming online who are going to change the world? Wouldn't that be better? But that requires you, as you age, to not become feeble. That's what matters.
Yeah. That's, I was going to ask you, kind of a perfect lead in. I was going to ask you, if you could sit down with 30-year-old Dave, what advice would you give him? And I wonder if it's probably what you're just talking about.
That's a big part of it. I mean, 30 is an interesting number because right around that time, I guess I just started Wharton Business School. I was about to get divorced from my first very short and unfortunate marriage. Don't get married.
I call them starter marriages.
I was married for like 2 years in my 20s. That was foolish. Um, yeah, I would have actually what I would have done was said, you know what? Um, the reason that you're struggling and suffering is that you have a problem with your hardware. It's not a moral failing. All of a sudden, I'm like, well, maybe I'm still fat after 90 minutes a day, 6 days a week in the gym for 18 months. Yeah, it's because I'm not trying hard enough, right? I'm not eating little enough, right? And I'm like starving, I'm ravenous all the time and all this. It's like, oh, it's okay to, or here, I would have told myself at 30, I would have said, your feelings are a data source. They matter. You should probably work on those. I don't know if I would have listened to myself. And then I would have also said, like, you have a hardware problem. So a lot of the reasons that you're, angry or anxious or just your brain won't work, it's that your body's not working. Like fix that. And I just started learning that, but that would have been the biggest thing, is that a lot of the emotions are not caused by thought patterns or other people. They're caused by biological patterns. And if you can just learn that, then it becomes a lot easier to have a spiritual practice.
Yeah, that's good advice. You've built companies, you built an industry, best-selling author, sold companies, influencing millions of people all the time to live a better, more healthier life. Has the success changed you in any way, in particular with regards to your relationship with happiness?
Well, when I was really young, like maybe 17, I said, money's going to make me happy, and maybe fame will make me happy, right? Oh, and
Mhm.
maybe love will make me happy. So I went to work. When I'm 23, Full Color Picture and Entrepreneur magazine, I'm the first guy to sell anything over the internet. And in fact, I was written about in something like 80 different magazines in a 2-month period, because like, this kid's selling things over the internet or something or another. We got to get going on that. We didn't have the word e-commerce yet. I don't think Amazon had started yet. This was when Mark Andreessen was just writing the first web browser. So right place, right time, right sense of the future. I was famous at 23. You know what? I was happy for 15 minutes. Look, oh my God, there's my picture in a big magazine I've read for years, an entrepreneur. Look at me, I'm a big deal. Literally, okay. Because it turns out dopamine only happens from pursuit of a goal. Getting the goal doesn't do anything for you. You just make another one. So I guess fame doesn't really do anything. So then I'm 26. I made $6 million co-founding a part of the company that held Google's first servers, the first data center company in the country, called Exodus. I co-founded the consulting group there, and we did $100 million a quarter in revenue. So I learned entrepreneurship, like basically drinking from a fire hose that had gasoline in it. So it was a good time. But when I had $6 million, I looked at a friend and I said, I'll be happy when I have 10.
Wow.
And I meant it. And I wasn't the only one. Money doesn't make you happy well, the studies all said about 78,000, but those were pre-Biden dollars. So I'm saying money above about $140,000 doesn't make you happy because that's just what the science says. Having your basic needs met, so you don't have to be worried about where you live and your cell phone bill and all that kind of stuff, that helps with happiness a lot. Above that, it doesn't change much. So money didn't do it, fame didn't do it. And then love, dude, I got married when I was around 26, 27. That'll work, right? Because I'll deal with my loneliness. And I didn't understand that all of those are revolving around invisible mitochondrial processes that power all life on the planet. So the way your body processes reality before you have a chance to even get a signal in your brain is based on 5 F words. And the first one is fear. So your body will scan things in microseconds and your brain doesn't get any signal for a third of a second. So your body's already decided, is it safe? And how should I make the dumb guy upstairs, the brain? How should I make him feel about this? So if you lean on a hot stove, no one on earth has ever said, you know what? My hand is burning right now. I guess I should move it. Your hand moves itself and you take credit for it. Good thing I moved so fast I didn't get burned. So we have proof there's someone else in there. And the ego's job, these F words, it's to keep the body alive as if you weren't in there. And in fact, that means that the fact you're in there is getting in the way of your body doing its job to stay alive. And that's where all this inner conflict comes from. So fear is the first F word. The second one is food. Eat everything, right? This works for bacteria, works for trees, right? And the third F word, Ashley, you probably know that one to make sure you have multiple generations.
Yeah, I know that one.
Which one's that?
Fornicate.
I was going to say fertility, but if you wanted to go a little dirty, okay, that's.
I was just trying to see where you were going. That's funny.
Yes, the other F word. So what this means is that when you walk into a room, before your brain even has a chance to know what's happening in the room, your body has already said, is it trying to kill me? Can I eat it? And if not, can I hump its leg? and you haven't got the signal yet, right? So is there anything you've ever done that you're ashamed of that isn't one of those 3 F words?
Yeah.
Is there any of the 7 deadly sins that don't come from those? Any of the Buddha's hindrances? No. The process that keeps life alive is the thing that makes us do things we're ashamed of. And it's because we think we are our body, right? And it's because our body manipulates us to make us do its bidding for what it thinks will stay alive. But the blessings on this is that there is a 4th F word that all life does. It's called friend. So we interoperate with our own species and the ecosystem around us, right? And then the final F word in my work that I added more recently, at least for humans, is forgiveness. But it really would be evolution. So all life on Earth, in order, don't let anything eat me, eat everything I can, reproduce with everything I can, be friends with things around me so that they can succeed as long as they also help me succeed. You know, it's the network effect. And then with whatever energy is left, improve myself and my species. This is what we do when we have no brains, right?
Yeah.
So we could embrace that and we could learn how to make it so our body doesn't feel fear unless it's actually dangerous. That's what peace is. And a master of peace actually doesn't feel fear even when it is dangerous. Because, like, what's the point of being reactive, even though I might die right now? Like, why don't I just, like, do my thing? This is the monk who can meditate in the middle of a hurricane. That's okay. Right? So, and then you get the person who learns how to do intermittent fasting or fasting. And all of a sudden, the fact that 1/3 of the thoughts in the average person's head are about tacos, well, they're about food anyway. Maybe you're the guy who doesn't have many thoughts about food because you've taught your body to just wait patiently, right? And then the number of thoughts, intrusive thoughts about sex are insane. What if You turned those things from lust and OnlyFans and masturbation even to sacred connection and harnessing that incredible life force energy, which is what chi is actually, and used it for good and for sacred connection, both to your partner and to God, if that's your thing, right? Wow. And then you probably have some energy left over for your community. And instead of being lonely, you could nourish your community so it nourishes you. And then what do you have? A ton of work or a ton of energy left to do the work so that you can practice forgiveness of yourself and others, and you can evolve yourself and teach yourself even more. That's the game. That's what we're all doing. Problem is, most of us still believe that we have one unified mind and body. And then we're so ashamed and embarrassed and confused when our body makes us think about legs or tacos when we wanted to think about math. Like, it's normal for your body to do that. Let's train the body to be a service dog instead of a wild animal. And then things will be better.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really good. I feel like, again, you are a very polarizing figure in a lot of ways, right? And we talked about this
Me?
yesterday. I don't want to
Literal
give
me?
any, I'm not going to honor anybody that takes shots at you, but, by
I love
naming
them.
them. But yeah. But what's the biggest misconception that people have about Dave Asprey?
um, I wouldn't know. What other people think of me is none of my business. I, I don't know if people have mixed. Some people think I'm short. That's probably weird. Someone told me that the other day. Uh, some
Hey, you're
people
not
think
short.
No, I'm not. I'm 6'4". Some people think that I'm like lying about having been 300 pounds, which I also find funny. I'm like, the picture from Entrepreneur Magazine is my proof I was fat. Like 1 million people have seen this and it's in print. Like, I don't know, but you could still, we didn't have digital cameras when I, when I was 23. Sorry, man. Like, what do you want to do? Young pup. So, other misconceptions. Some people think I'm like only data driven. My practice is equally data and spiritual and intuitive and scientific. Um, some people think I invented ketosis. I did not. I just made it a big deal. And also my advice in ketosis was, you probably should cycle in and out. Continuous ketosis is bad for you, but people forget that last part. Um, let's see. What else do people think about me?
Do you
Oh,
still drink? Go ahead.
That's a big misconception. Yeah, thank you. Some people still think I run Bulletproof, the company I founded.
Yeah.
Bulletproof removed me from the company without my consent, quite a while ago, and then sold the company to themselves. I have nothing to do with Bulletproof. I do not endorse any Bulletproof product. Danger Coffee is my new brand. It's called Danger because who knows what you might do, and it makes you feel different with or without butter and MCT. So that's a big misconception. Otherwise, and probably the biggest misconception, it's funny that you're asking me this because I never think about it. Um, yeah, sometimes people probably don't know that I have as powerful of a spiritual and psychological practice and impact as I do. I mean, 40 years of Zen is a neuroscience practice of advanced meditation. The neuroscientist from telepathy tapes works for me as my head neuroscientist. And so I have a very deep scientific understanding of altered states and spiritual progression because that's what I needed for my own self. And I do this for people every week. We make Satoria, which is an at-home neurofeedback program that's based on all of this knowledge. So this is a part of what I do. It's just coffee is a lot more popular than neurofeedback and spiritual stuff. You can do
Well, and
both.
that's why I wanted to talk to you because I was talking to your team and telling them kind of what I was up to with this spiritual, leaning biohacking conversation. And they were very much like, oh, Dave would really like to talk about this. He doesn't really get to talk about this a lot. And
Yeah, that's cool.
um, so I appreciate you taking the time to share that. Do you still drink MCT and ghee in your coffee, in your Danger coffee?
Um, I sometimes I do MCT, sometimes I do ghee, but the minerals that are part of the coffee make the coffee kind of hit different. So if I have a really big focused day, I'll add some butter and some MCT. Otherwise, I just drink Danger coffee with the minerals built in, and I feel really, really good.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Everybody listening should try it out. I've tried it and actually purchased it, and I do still add I became a bulletproof recipe, uh, convert many years ago with the
Oh,
with the
cool.
ghee and the coconut oil and MCT. But and I still love it. It's fantastic. But trying the Danger coffee with that mixture has been wonderful. Really love it.
I feel like it's a real upgrade, and I didn't want to just copy what I did before. Danger Coffee is based on my newest and latest mold testing standards. I didn't find the transparency I expected from my previous company, but the addition of a therapeutic dose of trace and ultra trace minerals, it shifts how you feel, and it's really good coffee. It tastes so good. So Danger Coffee, and it's danger because who knows what you might do. And the next time a bureaucrat says, you will do this untested medical thing for your own safety, you can literally say, no, thanks, I choose danger. And you're talking about your coffee. So that's why I did it.
My son's a big fan of it too, and we joke because we're big Austin Powers fans. So it's my middle name is Danger.
So good.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time. I really appreciate it. One last question for you. You know, if you had like one day or maybe even 1 hour to teach humanity one final lesson, what would you want everyone to know?
uh, if they would believe it, I'd want everyone to know that consciousness created the universe, not the other way around.
That's good. I think it's real.
That's what the data says if you do quantum math, but most people, I think, don't absorb the enormity of that. But yeah, the biocentrism perspective on reality, the stuff we've been studying forever, the unstated assumption, which AI can also validate, is that it is basically that consciousness emerges out of reality, but it's very, very clear reality emerges out of consciousness.
Which means we're all connected as well, which is
Yeah, it's true. Sometimes I'm really connected to that guy. My God, I have to do some feelings.
Dave Asprey. It's been great talking to you as always. I really appreciate it. If you want to hang on just a second, we'll wrap it up. But thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thanks, Ashley.
Imagine if you could go back to the early days of companies like Apple, Tesla, or SpaceX, not because of the products they were selling at the time, but because you believed in the future they were trying to build. That's what Igniton is all about. Yes, today we create premium wellness products designed to support cognition, longevity, and restorative sleep and skin. And they're all backed by carefully selected ingredients and supported by clinical research. But for us, they're only the beginning. At Igniton, we believe the future of human wellness will be shaped not only by chemistry, but by a deeper understanding of how living systems organize, communicate, and maintain coherence. We're investing in the science, the research, and the technologies that could one day expand how we think about recovery, performance, and healthy aging. Every bottle we ship today helps fund that journey. When you choose Igni Cognition, Igni Longevity, Igni REM Sleep, or Igni Peptide Eye Serum, you're not simply buying a supplement. You're joining a community that believes the next great frontier in wellness is still waiting to be discovered. Some companies sell products, others build the future. We intend to do both. Learn more about Igniton's mission, explore the science, and become part of the Igniton community at igniton.com by using code ASHLEY to save 15% on your first purchase. That's igniton.com and code ASHLEY for 15% off without a subscription. Igniton is building the future of quantum wellness. Igniton, born from light, backed by science.
Thanks for listening to the Biohacking Standards, the foundations and fundamentals for a better you.